Hello and welcome to Happy Talkers Parent Bootcamp Lesson Pack 3, Strategies for Speech, Language, and Processing. Speech and language is such a big part of what we're all working on with our kiddos, and when they have ASD, and basically we want them interacting with the world and interacting with the people around them. I wanted to walk through just how we got to building the words, how we got to building expressive communication. So step one, we just built a sound repertoire. So different sounds that your child makes, not words, just sounds. Then step two, we started playing vocal games with them. Ah, ah, bah, bah. Step three, as they grew, we increased opportunities to listen to sound. So if the doorbell rang or the phone rang, we'd say, oh, what was that? That ring, 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 and trying to respond or make the same sound. Step four, we moved on to talking in a way that promotes language development. So now we want to start focusing them in on words. And so we say, oh, dog, the dog is eating, the dog is wagging his tail, that type of thing. And then we added sounds to gestures. So when we were doing maybe a game, we would make a sound that went with what gesture we were making. So if the car's going down the ramp, we go, boom, down the ramp, or crash, or boom, or bang, bang, bang. Sounds that would go along with what we're doing. So that basically what that does is they're doing something and now you've added a sound to it, so it makes it more meaningful for them. And then when the next step is adding words and gestures to actions and events. So when things happen, like the car crashes into another car, we say crash. Or if the door closes, we go boom. Or something falls down, we go uh-oh. So things that actually happen, we're now connecting words to it or sounds to it. Then the next thing is we keep repeating it the same way. So now that they know there's a sound that goes with that action, the more that you repeat it, then the goal is for them to repeat it as well. And then step 8 is encouraging word use during activities and interactions. And that's what you're doing all day long, every day, just talking and talking and talking and talking. Because the goal is vocal and verbal turn taking. So conversation, we want to focus everything on getting them conversing back and forth. So the reason that we're focusing on turn taking is because it really does help children learn the rules in conversation. I say something, then you say something. I say something, then you say something. And it can be verbal and it can be through play. So we teach them turn taking in play, and then it grows into verbal turn taking. So let's talk about the strategies. There's so many, but let's get started. So how can you help? First, you got to give them a cue. So cueing your child for speech and language, it's super easy and it's pretty natural, but let's talk about, how to break it down a little bit. So you could do things like taking either or all of your child's turn. So all or part of your child's turn, like giving them physical help. So when it's a turn taking in play, you're going to, your child will take a turn, and then you'll take a turn, and you may add your variation to it. That might be a little bit harder for your child. So that's where you help them take their turn by, let's say, putting the ball in the ball tower. So maybe they've been rolling the ball up to now. So you pick up the ball and you put it in the ball tower, and they're very interested, but they don't know how to do it. That's when you do a hand over hand. And then you can also, another thing that you can do for your kiddo to help them is give them some verbal help when they're trying to say something, but they don't know how. So you jump in and you say this, or tell me this. And what you want to try to do is avoid over prompting them. So you want to just try to do a partial prompt for it. So like you could do initial sounds of the words like ah, like for apple, what do you want? I want an, tell me ah, and then they say apple is what we're hoping for. Um, so just kind of jumping in and telling them what they should say is where your mind should be at. So know that when they're looking at you that way, they have no idea of where to start. So giving them that little cue, or even just moving your mouth in the way of that the first sound should make, like bah, bah, well, maybe we'll give them the cue to jump in with the word. And then the other part is just any natural cues. So giving them a hint by slowing down, pausing. When you ask them a question, do you want juice or milk? You're looking at them like, it's your turn next. You have to tell me an answer. So you give them the wide eyes, you kind of staring at them, and then they're looking at you because they know that they're supposed to do something or say something, and that might be where you're jumping in with the initial sound, like bah, bah, to say ball or juice or milk. So the more visual cues you can offer them by, your facial expressions, pictures of what they want, pointing to, pushing the thing that they want forward, like pushing, as a gesture or a visual, anything that you can give them without giving them the full answer will help them learn how to jump in, and it'll make them feel more successful. So if you just answer it for them, then they just move on. But if they have to take part in it and really try, and then they actually say it, then you can give them a lot of positive reinforcement, and that will be exactly what will make them want to try again in the future to speak. The other things, it's always a little tricky to know about answering questions and asking questions. So you first, when you're asking them questions, you need to probably ask the question and answer it. So do you want to go on the swing or the slide? And you see your child looking at the slide, and you say, oh, you're looking at the slide. Tell me, I want to go on the slide, or I want slide. And so you have to tell them exactly word for word what to say initially when they're first developing language. So again, if they're only at single words and you're using the I want slide example, they'll say just slide. But when they're adding more words, then you could say I, one at a time. I want, slide, or signing by pointing to yourself, I, and then the sign for want, which is opening and closing your hands in front of you, want, and then slide. So depending upon what level your child is at, you'll definitely have to ask your question and answer the question. You can give them choice questions, which kind of narrows down the options for them. And you could use visual support as well. So what that looks like is, you have juice, a cup of juice and a cup of milk sitting out. First, you ask the general question, do you want juice or milk? Because you already know what the choices are. And then if they don't answer, do you want juice? You push the juice forward, or milk. And then you see them looking at the milk. I would say, it looks like you want milk. Tell me, I want milk. And I would hand it to them. The other way to use choice questions are, so when we talk to our kiddos, we might say to them, what did you do at school today? Which is a very broad question, and they might not know how to answer that or what answer you're looking for. So what you want to say is, what did you do at school today? Did you go outside and play, or did you stay inside and play? Or if what's helpful to do with your child's teacher is to ask them every day, like a certain question, the same question, so that you can talk to your child about that. So ask them every day what book they read. Ask the teacher, what book did you guys read today? What art did you do today? And then when you know that, when you're driving home, you say, oh, did you make snowmen today, or did you make frogs today in art? And so you are engaging them in conversation, but it's very specific, and it helps them to narrow in on, okay, we're talking about art today, and did I make a snowman or did I make a frog? I made a snowman. So now, as opposed to what did you do at school today? Well, I did so much, that they probably would just say play, because that's the easiest thing to say. So giving them a choice to narrow the field. And as far as yes and no questions, it's harder to teach no before yes, because they have to know how to refuse things first. So if your child doesn't have that skill down yet, where when they don't want something, they push it away and shake their head and say no, 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 then I would start working on yes, because you could do like, you want milk? Yes, say yes. So anytime you give them something, oh, you want juice today? Do you want juice? Say, yes, I want juice. Is this a shirt? Yes, this is a shirt. So a lot of yeses. And then eventually when the no comes in, then you could start shaking your head. Did you want milk? And start doing things like giving them the wrong thing on purpose. And they'll look at you like crazy, but like you're crazy, but for sure they want juice, so you give them milk and you go, here you go, here's your milk. And they kind of look at you and you say, oh, you don't want milk? Say, no, no milk, and have them try to remember to push that away so that they understand no. Yes and no are really great for them to learn, and if you can combine the head shakes or nods with that, then they have the gesture down as well. So it's good for them to learn it all at the same time, the gestures and the words if possible. So that is working on cueing them by asking them a question. So when we talk about more complicated questions, though, they're going to need a little bit more cueing. So more complicated questions are WH questions, and those are what questions, who, where, when, how, and why. So what is the easiest? What questions? And who and where are harder, and how and why are the absolute hardest? I asked the question in the slide, do you know why? But I'll tell you why. I'll let you in on the secret. How and why require abstract answers. So with all the other questions, the what, the who, the where, even the when, it's something that is a little bit more concrete. So what is that? It's an object that's in their environment generally. And then who is just generally also in your environment, or if there's a picture there, and when is generally in the night or in the morning. But how and why, how do you get out of the rain? Why do you use an umbrella? Those are much more complicated. So for those types of questions, the WH questions, how do you teach them to answer? So for what, you hold it up, you point to it, you look at it together. So when you're working on answering questions, try to have the item in the environment so that they're not thinking, they're not having to pull from something abstract. So take the item, let's say it's a ball, and we say, oh, what is this? And hold it up for them, point to it, try to get them, get the object between the two of you and look at it together. What is this? Tell me, bah. And so you give them a cue, just a partial cue. You don't want to give them the whole answer, especially if you know that they know what it is. It's a bah. And hopefully they'll say ball. If they don't say ball, you say ball. And then you kind of put it into a place where they can either touch it or hold it so that it makes more sense. And then when you hand it to them, say ball, it's a ball, tell me ball. And hopefully they say ball. If they don't say ball, just you say ball. Say it like 5 times to make sure, in different ways. Ball, it's a big ball, it's a red ball. And give them the sign if you can. And then throughout the day, if you're working on a specific vocabulary word that they're learning, then you want to bring it up a lot. So any ball that day that you see, make sure to point it out to them. Oh, there's a ball, there's a green ball, just like the ball we saw before. So the more they hear the vocabulary, the more repetition of it, the more it will click with them. For who, where, and when questions, they're a little trickier, and it's not as easy to work on because it's not as like, I have an item, you tell me the name of it. So you have to kind of think about like how to build them into your conversation. So of course, if somebody comes over, pictures are great. So if you have a photo album for who, that is the ideal way to work on who. So who is this? And so you'll hear your kiddo say, what is this? Sometimes, so just keep telling them it's a who. A person is a who is this? It's grandma. Who is that? And so when you're working on who as well, don't ask them for 25 different people. Pick like 3 people that you're going to focus on over a week or 2 and focus on them that way. So maybe it's grandma, grandpa, brother, or hopefully they've got their brother, they know their brother, but they may not call them by their name. So that's what you're focusing on when it's immediate family and you know that they know who they are, but they may not say their name. Then labeling their pictures is ideal. So you pull out like maybe even your phone and show it to them. Who's this? Who's that? And talk about, oh, that's grandma, tell me grandma. Oh, that's brother, tell me brother, or Johnny. And then, so who questions are another one that are very concrete. And, eventually you can talk about it in the abstract way and say, who's coming over this afternoon? And then because you've had a conversation, well, grandma's coming over, that is going to be a harder question to ask than talking about the picture on your phone or the picture in the book or the person in the environment. So when grandma walks in the door, you say, oh, who is that? It's grandma. And then, encourage them to go up, especially if they're having a hard time greeting, and give grandma a hug. And you always want to model for them first. So you give grandma a hug and then give grandma a hug, and then you have your child do it. For where questions, that's one where you could do, where are we? We're in the kitchen. Where are we? So I would start first with things that are in the house. You could talk about yourself and your child, or you could talk about items. So where is the ball? It's on the table. Where is the ball? It's on the chair. And moving the item around in that room, and then then you move it out. So think about, first, everything is very small and focused into one room, one area, and then you slowly expand into, where are we? We're in the kitchen. Where are we? We're in the living room. Then moving on, where are we? We're at the park. Where are we? We're at the grocery store. So start small so that they get the concept of where. Where is something? Where is it located? And then just widen so that you're asking them those questions and they're able to answer in bigger environments. And then with when, that is really tough. So you want to do things like, when do we go to bed? And keep it like really big. So when do we go to bed is at night. When do we wake up in the morning is in the morning. When do we wake up is in the morning. When do we eat breakfast? In the morning. So that one I would work on third. So who would be first, where would be second, and when would be third. And so when things happen, let them know. So, oh, it's breakfast time. It's morning. It's time to eat breakfast. It's morning. It's time to wake up. When do we wake up? In the morning. So just weaving it into conversation as they're doing things. When do we play with our bath toys? When we're taking a bath. When do we eat dinner? In the evening, like those types of things. So just start bringing it into conversation, and when you're doing things, talk about it. And then for how and why, the best way to teach them to answer is to turn it into a yes or no question. You're crying. Are you sad? Are you mad? Instead of, why are you crying? And then you can wrap it up and say, oh, you're crying because you're sad. And that way, first you're able to know the right answer, and then you can fill it in. There's a lot of really cute books out there with like the why questions. If you go on Linguist Systems, it's Lingu Lingua, I want to spell it right. And then Systems, it's a website for speech and language materials. There's also a website called superduper.com, and they sell language development materials. And so they have like pictures that look exactly, so the little girl will be standing soaking wet, and they'll say, why is she wet? And obviously it's raining, so you can say, because she's raining. So those are things you can do also, like getting things like that, or printing some Google images of kids, of ideas like, why is she sad? Why is it raining? And talk to them about it, or just within the environment. Oh, baby is crying. Why do you think she's crying? Do you think she's hungry, or do you think she's tired? Those ideas for examples, or just kind of jumping on things when they happen. Oh, that girl is all wet, and you happen to be driving. What happened? Oh, she must have been caught in the rain. Why is she wet? Because it's raining. And so when you're talking with your child and having these conversations, plan a little bit ahead of what you're going to be working on a lot with your ESDM goals. Why questions come up rather later, so make sure that they're able to do the what, who, where, and when before you jump into the whys and hows. And don't make them too difficult. If they're just repeating you, then that means that they don't understand. So if your child just repeats the question you're asking them, then you have to break it down, like, what is it? And they say, what is it? It's a. So they'll say, what is it? And you could say, it's a, to cue them, and it's a ball, or it's a house. Here are some hints you can give your child too, when you're working on having them answer your questions. So for the nonverbals, remember that are, just slow things down for them, and then lean towards them, looking really expectantly, like, what is it? And then you look at them with your eyes open, and you're leaning forward, and you're holding the item, and you're waiting and looking expectantly with a positive, make sure your face is positive and not scary. And just kind of, that's the nonverbal. And you can use like physical support as well, to kind of have them touch it. So take their hand and have them touch the ball. What is that? It bounce, bounce, bounce. What is it? It's a. And then jump in at the very last thing you want to do is tell them the full name. So first it's b, it's a b, and then finally it's a ball. For our kiddos that like to talk about one thing and only one thing, so maybe they're focused on trains and they only want to talk about trains, then you can have, your job with those kiddos is keeping them on track. So you say one more thing about, Thomas, and then we're going to talk about, something different, or one more thing about Thomas, and then we're going to talk about playing with our friend, or that, just kind of redirecting them, because they can't regulate, they just kind of want to talk about their focus. So you have to pull them out of it, and get them talking to you about other things. And if they understand verbal, that's the best way to talk with them and give them tips. But if they don't, then, use your nonverbals with your facial expression, use physical cues if need be, and then use verbal. So when you're in the moment, in the day, back and forth, how are you going to work on turn taking with them? So first of all, you're still talking all the time. Remember, even though your child might not be talking back, you have to talk to them a lot, because it's the most natural thing is, if somebody doesn't respond to you, you just don't talk. And that's the worst thing you can do, because they need to hear language uh, all the time, and they have to hear how it goes together, especially specifically regarding what's going on in their current environment. So share your thoughts, your ideas, your likes, your dislikes. Oh, I like strawberry ice cream. What kind of ice cream do you like? Because this sort of thing gives your child new ideas. If you're always talking about the same thing, or they're experiencing the same thing all the time, they don't sort of spread their wings and try new language or new vocabulary. Um, and then you can do things like making a comment and waiting for them expectantly using your nonverbal. So, mommy cut her hair. And like you're just waiting expectantly for them to respond to you. And if they don't say anything, say, do you like it? Do you? And then they shake their head, say, I like it. I like your hair, mommy, or your hair looks nice. So you're telling them specifically what to say in the moment. And then the other thing is, like we had said, making a comment and then asking a question. I like vanilla ice cream. What do you like? I like the red shirt. What do you like? And so that gives them that chance to, you said something, they say something. And again, remembering that turn taking and play leads to conversation. So if your child is not at that, back and forth conversation level, back it up and make sure that they're turn taking in play first. And then, of course, you're going to always use all of these at all the time. You're constantly talking to them and trying to get them to answer, but it's a clue if they're not turn taking in play. So you have to back up during focus time and really work on my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. So here are some things to think about in your environment when you're working on developing your child's speech and language skills. You want to eliminate any distractors. That could be verbal distractors, other people talking. It could be the radio, it could be the television. So sometimes even just music in the background is very distracting for our kiddos. Um, if if your child is easily overstimulated by sounds, you might need to provide a quiet time or a quiet area for listening breaks. So with this, it really happens a lot in the classroom, but it can happen at home as well if they have siblings that are exciting or you have a busy home. You may need to create a little space for them to just decompress and re-regulate by providing a quiet area for listening breaks. And then with the little ones that are in preschool, if they're having a hard time, with communication, we want to get them sitting at the front of the class. So, in preschool, it's more about sitting, like if there's a circle time or group learning activity, you want them seated as close to as possible to the teacher during learning times. That allows for less distraction. So the closer the child is to their teacher, the teacher can reach out and make sure that they're paying attention, reach out and make sure that they're focusing in. So get them speak to your child's teacher about, making sure that they're close by with when it comes time to give directions. If your child's in a group like sport or art or, art class or something like that, it's important that they know that that's something that's hard for your child, that it's hard for them to stay focused. It's hard for them to communicate, so that and then giving them a clue of, do you mind, when you're giving them instructions, to have my child up close so that we can make sure that they're not distracted. It really does help for folks to understand what helps your child, because most educators and coaches want to see your child succeed. So just, let them know they get easily distracted. So the closer you keep them when you're giving directions, they'll do better. If you don't mind, please. And then the big one is gaining eye contact before you give your child instructions, or even instructions specifically, but transition them or things like that. So calling their name, hey, Johnny. And if they look at you, then you give the instruction. If they don't look at you, you have to go up close to them until they get that skill down. And when they hear their name, they turn and look at the sound source. um, Otherwise, if you say, Johnny, go get your truck, or Johnny, go get the truck and clean up, or Johnny, it's time to clean up, put your toys away, or Johnny, come here, those things will all be ignored if the child doesn't look up at you at first, because they have, kids with ASD have a harder time discriminating background noise from the person speaking. And so that's why it's really important that you get their eye contact before giving instructions. Otherwise, you're going to give the same instruction 6 times and nothing is going to happen. Okay, so with focus time and any other time, I consider you guys teachers with all the things that you're teaching the kids. So here are some teaching strategies. When you have a kiddo that has speech and language challenges, or if you've noticed that your child is not responding quickly, you may need to give them some additional wait time to respond. That just is letting us know that especially if they're focused on you and they're looking at you after you've asked them a question, you just have to give them some more time to process the information. I usually count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000 before I ask the question again. So what is it? 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. It's a, and then they may answer ball. Or I could ask again, what is it? It's a ball. So know that it's going to take them a little more time to process. Basically, what's happening is you ask the question, and now they're processing the question and deciding, what is she asking me? Where do I get that information? And then by then they'll pull it up. So they're just got to give them some more time. The more that you can show them things using visuals rather than verbals, the better. So if if you want them to go get something and it's something that's in the room, of course you're going to use pointing, and so that'll work on their joint attention. If you're showing them how to do something, show them and use some words that are really meaty. So you put it in here, you take it out there, or you pour it here. So just use the words that are most important when you're showing them, because that will both maintain their attention, because they're visual, mostly kiddos are visual learners, and you don't want to get too verbal because you'll lose them. It'll sound like wah, 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 like Charlie Brown's parents talking if you talk too much. Maintain visual attention. So anytime that you're trying to teach your child something new, you want to keep them focused in. So that might mean that you have to get right in their face with the object you're talking about right in front of them, between the two of you, just like we've talked about in focus time before. The positioning is really key. So when you're showing them something new, you have it right close to you, or in the middle of you, or you have moved really close to the item, or you may even pick up your child and show them the item and talk about it together. So it has to be close by. I would say within 2 feet when you're showing them things and presenting them things initially. Anytime you can present new information in a multi-sensory way, by anything moving, is really helpful. So games like if they have to learn, new pictures or letters, you maybe are taking the actual cards that have the letters on them, flipping them over and putting them around the room. So they have to go look for one of the cards and then they turn it over and, oh, that's an A, because the more movement, again, it's a really great way for these guys to learn. When you're giving directions, you always want to keep them really tight, meaning, go get your shoes, go get your backpack, and not give them 5 directions at once. So, as well as giving a warning. So, what giving your direction would look like is Johnny, then he looks at you, go get your shoes and bring them back here. Or Johnny, and he looks at you, go get your jacket, we're going to the park. And then with warnings, we've talked about some transitions with when we talked about behavior, but warnings are key. In 1 more minute, we're going to clean up. In 2 more minutes, we're going to clean up. Starting with 5 minute warning, then moving it down to 2 and 1. And of course, the timing doesn't have to be specific because your child can't feel what 2 minutes are. They just know 5 is more than 2 because 5 comes first, and then 2 minutes, and then 1. And then we generally, for the little ones, do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, clean up, clean up. And we turn the lights off generally in the room because it changes the environment and lets them know something different is happening. So that may help you with your child's transitions as well. Turning the lights off really changes the whole atmosphere. I'm not saying pitch black. I'm just saying, turning the lights off is a good way to change the environment and to get their attention and to break them out of what they're currently doing. And so you can start teaching them that's a cue. And it's quite helpful. And then as they are talking more, you can ask specific questions to ensure that they're understanding. And an easy way to think about this is you give a direction, then you want them to tell you what you said. Go get your shoes and come back to me. What are you going to do? I'm going to go get my shoes. Good. And then what are you going to do? Come back to you. Great. And then you want to repeat it again. Go get your shoes and come back to me. I'll see you in a minute. So you're stating the direction, you're breaking the direction down, and then they're repeating it back to you. And then when they're stuck with something with regards to giving you answers to a question, you may have to give them the key words. So they may be stuck because they want to tell you something, not even that's an answer, but you could say, you could just give them like, ball, grandma, are you talking about grandma? Are you talking about a car? And, that sometimes will help them with responding to your questions. So I just wanted to give you some activities that you can work on with your child to encourage speech and language development. Scrapbooks are huge. So if you keep a scrapbook of different activities, it's great because you can go back over them and talk about with your child in the pictures, hopefully, what your child's doing. You can work on a lot of different language development skills, including recalling past events, responding to who questions and where questions, which we had talked about are hard anyway. Where did we go? We went to Disney World. Who's this? That's Mickey Mouse. Who's that? And so those types of really meaningful events can be turned into speech and language development activities. Play-Doh is a great one, especially for turn taking. If your child likes Play-Doh, you can do things like one can make a ball and the other can smush the ball, or you can make cookies and have conversation. What are you making? I'm making pizza. I'm making cookies. My cookies are so yummy. What shape are yours? And so that back and forth with Play-Doh. Pass it along as a game that you can play with an older kiddo at like the dinner table with the other kids. So I went to the store and I bought some juice. And then the next person would say, I went to the store, I bought some juice and some bread. And then the next person would say, I went to the store and I bought some juice and some bread and some milk, and just basically every next person would add something to what they bought at the store. You could do that with a story as well. Like, I went to the park and I played with the swings. I went to the park and I played with the swings and I saw my friend. And you can either choose to, remember all the things that came first, which is tricky, or you could just add on to the story. Sorting is always excellent for speech language development and cognitive skills. We've talked about that. When it's cleanup time, we put certain things in one bin, certain things in other bins. Describing pictures in books is always good, or describing pictures that you have in your scrapbook. Oh, what's going on? Well, the girl's riding a bike. Oh, mommy's swimming in the ocean in this picture. Those types of real events are great. And then also in the books, like if you're reading a story and you see like a really great picture that they could describe, you could set aside, tell me what she's doing. Oh, she's climbing the mountain. Oh, wow. Or she's crying. Why do you think she's crying? So weaving in the questions within the story and describing pictures. Dramatic play is awesome for speech and language development. It can just be acting out like one scene from a book or from a movie, but it can build into more and more. The reason dramatic play is so great is it really does, it allows the child to express themselves in a way where they know what happened in the story, or they know what happened in the show that they watched or the movie they watched with you, and then you might need to remind them, well, what happened next? Then what did she do? But it gives them a really strong model that was probably really motivating, like either within the story or within the movie to become. So highly encourage that. It may mean you have to be super silly and be one of the characters as well, or you might have to remind them of what comes next, but it'll be really great and really fun for them. Anytime you can do singing and rhymes, that is always wonderful for speech and language development. Singing in the car, singing everywhere you go, a song for every activity is a good thing. So besides talking a lot, you better get your voice ready. Sequencing stories is great for speech and language development, and that could be just something where you read a story and then you say, oh, so what happened? So the girl went to the store and she fell off of her bike on the way, and she scraped her knee, and the person came and helped, and just talking it through about what happened. Initially, you only want to do 3 steps, and then you can build to more and more. But it helps them organize in their brain as well the different steps of things. You can make books with them. So I've done this so many times. We basically find pictures that they like in magazines or online of something that they're interested in. Like if it's trains, I'm going back to trains because I see trains a lot. They pick out different pictures of trains, and then you put them in a book, and then you can write the story. So they kind of glue them in or tape them, and you write a little story about it. Or they can be photos that were taken when you were on a trip, and have them make their own scrapbook, and then whatever they say about the picture, you write it below the picture. And so it ends up to be a really nice little memory book for them and you when they get older. I Spy is always a good one. I spy a chair. You may want to just call I see a chair, I see a clock, and that works on their joint attention skills as well, especially if you say to them after if you say, I see a clock, then where's the clock? And then we point to the clock. So you add a little step there. 10 questions is good. So is it green? Is it food? Is it, just asking, trying to get them to guess, or them trying to get you to guess what object they're thinking about, or what object they see. First, it should be what they see in their environment, and then eventually it can be something where they're thinking about it, and you have to try to guess with 10 questions. Any guessing games are great. Simon Says is good because it's following directions. Simon says touch your nose, Simon says touch your tummy. writing in journals when they get a little bit older. And it doesn't have to be too much older. I'm saying like 5 years old, 4.5, giving them a book, like just a composition book, and then having them ask them a question and have them, draw a picture and about it, and then you can write at the bottom what they said about it. Again, when they see their words in print, it's more meaningful to them, and they're very proud of it. And of course, reading is the most important speech language and development activity. And I guess that brings us to the end of speech, language, and processing strategies. And thanks so much for your attention.